Hey there, welcome to Coding at Home with the Code Hub. Hi again, I'm Matt from the Code Hub, and we're back again. We've finished Everyone Can Code puzzles. We're off the end of the book, and we're on to new playgrounds now. We're going to go spend a little bit of time with Learn to Code 2, and we're going to play around with one of the little homework tasks I asked you to do last night, which was to create a series of steps all the way to the end of the row. We stopped at 12 in the first version of the playground. I want you to create a series of steps with characters on each step all the way to the very end, and we'll look at a couple strategies for doing that. And then we're going to go download this playground here, Lights Camera Code, from Apple's own Learn to Code playgrounds. So let's go off to the iPad and get working. All right, so we're back on the iPad. This is where we left off yesterday. We were doing the appending removed values playground page. This is pretty far down in the arrays chapter. There's a lot of material inside this arrays chapter, including world creation. So if you're a big Minecraft fan, you might want to spend more time doing other playgrounds here. But what we wound up with yesterday was we had an array of all coordinates in row 2. So this row 2 coordinates was filled. That's a variable that we have. And it was filled by calling this row method on our world instance. And we said we can pass in a parameter to say, hey, I want all the coordinates for row 2. Here we created an empty array of coordinates. And you might remember, you may have struggled with this a little bit yesterday, because I know it's relatively new. We have the variable name here, coordinates. We have a colon, and then we have the square brackets around the word coordinate. And if you remember, that just means that we have an array of items that are the type coordinate. And we're going to get into types and all that kind of thing a little bit later in the session today. So the reason why we do this is because Swift needs to know about the type here, so that it can optimize certain things for you, and then it can also check certain things for you to make sure that you're able to call methods on an array and use the items out of the array in a specific way. It's all in the interest of safety and eliminating bugs. So we create our empty array of coordinates, which we're going to add to as we go through our row 2 coordinates. So we go here and we say, all right, so we have a loop for 1.12. We place a block at the coordinates. And then what we do is for every time we place a block, we remove it. And what we called remove first, because originally we were calling remove, and we were using this I as our index. But we came up with a weird step pattern, right? It was sort of every other set of blocks we would skip once we got going. So we fixed that bug by calling remove first. And then we also ran into an index out of range error. And then what we do is after we'll move our code over so we can see it all in one line. After we remove that coordinate and we store it in a variable called removed coordinate, we then add that removed coordinate to our coordinates array. So the task that I set you last night was, could you figure out a way to fill up every single block in that row 2, with a character on it? Well, let's check it out. Let's see what we have first. Let's run fastest, because this is the code that works. There we go. We're iterating through our array. We're going all the way to the end. You can see we're kind of layering in the blocks, and we're getting further away as we remove items from our row 2 coordinates. So when we're looping through here, when we're looping through this row 2 coordinates, that row 2 coordinates is getting shorter and shorter as we go. So we're short a few. And remember, we tapped on this N1 and said, okay, that column is column 19. Well, one way we could fix this is just say, I could just do it the sort of old-fashioned way and just hard code it, say 20. Now if we run it, let's see what happens. So I'm basically changing this loop. So I'm going to do this 20 times because it's 1 dot 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 20. Then I'm going to loop through my row 2 coordinates, place a block. And then when I get to the end here, I'm going to remove the first coordinate in my row 2 coordinates. So it'll start at this end. And then the next time around, my first coordinate will be here. Then my first coordinate will be here. And so on all the way to the end. And we'll add it to our other coordinates. Then we'll loop through all of those. So we should, as we remove each one of these, we should add them to this coordinate so that when we loop through this array, we're adding a character on each one of the ones we remove. So let's try running this just faster so we have an idea of what's going on. So this should be very like the previous run, except instead of 12 times, we're going to run it 20 times. All right, there we go. We're layering on all of our columns. We're layering blocks onto them. And we're still going. We've gone past the 12 now. Okay, cool. And we did it. Okay, so we filled it. That's one way to do it. Now, as we saw before, sometimes these can be randomized. We might get a puzzle where we don't know exactly how many rows, how many columns we'll have in a particular puzzle. So one thing we could do is there's a really interesting property on our array. So, an array is just a type. We can call methods on it, like this remove first method or remove at method or append method. There's a really nice property, and we can call it here. We'll say, all right, so we want to go for I in 1 dot 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 what? Well, we'll go over here and we'll say, let's say row 2 coordinates dot. There's this property down here, count. And do you have any idea what that's going to do? Well, it's going to give us back the number of items in our array. So we have 20 items in our array, right? Because we start at 0 and we go to 20. We go to 19 here, sorry. So let's try running this. So we're going to go, it's going to say, all right, so for 1 to 20, we're going to loop through this. And then we'll do our other loop with the coordinates that we've taken out. Let's try running that. There we go. There's our first row, our second. Our third, we've got kind of a cool effect going on here. Go, another one, another one. Creating all of our rows. I really don't know what happened to the block image there. Ooh, and we had a problem running our page. All right, well, let's try going back and coming back in here. Let's try running that again and see if we get an actual useful error here. We'll run fastest to try to run through this quick. There we go. There are our tiles looking normal again. Cool. There's our... Oh, there we go. All right, not bad. So this is another way that we could do this a little bit more dynamically. I'd feel more comfortable using this rather than hard coding a 20 in here, because I want to be able to handle a puzzle that has more columns than just 20. So this is another way you could have done it. Using this count property is really handy. You'll find you use that a lot, especially when you want to check to see if you expect maybe, oh, I won't do anything until I have 5 items on my to-do list. Well, that's how you would figure out if you had 5 items. You would say, give me the to-do list dot count. All right, and then like a few of the other errors that we might have seen is this thing, right? You have to type in a lot of this stuff by hand. If we tried to do something like this, create an empty array called coordinates, and we hit run faster, we're going to have an error. The error is going to look something like this. Empty collection literal requires an explicit type. That sounds really, really complicated. That basically just means, hey, if you have an empty array, you're going to need to tell us what kind of type you're going to store in that array. So that's where you go down, you find the colon, it's over the K, so you tap on the K and drag down. Hit a space, and now I'm going to define the type that goes in there. So it's giving me suggestions, and notice these are all capitalized because these are all different types. So it's trying to be helpful, but I actually want an array of types. So to specify that I have an array of types, I want to use the square brackets. So I tap on the H and drag down to the right. And now it'll still be helpful, the autocomplete bar. I can pick coordinate. Now we've addressed our problem. So that should be us done and ready to go with our arrays. Like I said, this is you use arrays a lot. This is well worth practicing, especially if you're going to move on with us to the next playgrounds. So we're going to close Learn to Code 2. And what we're going to do now is we're going to open up a little playground called Lights, Camera, Code, I believe. So let's go down to See All. So I went down here to See All to get to my playgrounds. Inside these main ones for Apple, we have a few different playgrounds to play around with. This is the one that we're going to start on next, and it progresses into these two. Assemble your camera and flashy photos. What we're going to try to do is work through this one and then get to these two on the back of it. But for today, we're just going to start with Lights, Camera, Code. So what you're going to do is you're going to tap on Get. And I've already downloaded it. I'll get it just for fun, so I can kind of wait along with you guys while it's downloading on your device. And we wait and we wait. So what we're going to do with Lights, Camera, Code is we're going to actually start looking at app development a little bit more. So far what we've done with Learn to Code 1 and 2 is we've looked at a lot of the fundamentals of computer programming. So we've looked at the syntax that makes up a for loop and how you define declare a variable, how you write functions, how you call functions, how you write types. We're actually going to see a lot of this stuff in action now. So this is kind of the next step in our programming journey. What we're really going to be doing is kind of building an app. The app is going to use the camera on your iPad. So for these playgrounds, you do need an iPad. Unfortunately, Swift Playgrounds on the Mac does not support these playgrounds just because we don't have access to the camera on the Mac. You're going to use the camera, though, to take pictures and then take the result of the picture that you just snapped and draw it in a view. So we're going to be dealing with these things called views pretty heavily. And one in particular is called an image view, which is basically just a view that we draw an image into. We're going to deal a little bit with coordinate planes because we're going to have a little grid on the screen where we can place our views. And that's going to be a big part of designing your applications, is figuring out where on the screen something's going to end up. And then we're also going to save stuff to the camera roll. So it's not just playing around in Swift Playgrounds and then you exit out of Swift Playgrounds and those photos that you've taken are gone. This stuff is actually going to stick around and live in your photo albums. All right, so I've downloaded my new one. Let's open up that one since we went through the trouble of downloading it. This is a bit different. Now, we don't have a book for this series, but a lot of the instructions are built into this Swift Playground. So I'll walk you through that. We'll go through the first page anyway today, maybe the second, and we'll start building our camera. So we all know what cameras are like and what they do, whether you have Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. So as it says here, to take photos, we're going to connect components such as a camera, an image view, and a photo album. These are actual pieces of code that someone at Apple's written and then plugged into this Swift Playground that we're going to be using and we're going to be configuring ourselves. So we're going to save our pictures to our Photos app. We'll decorate them with stickers and labels. And then we'll get started. Now, I personally really like this kind of diagram here. Sometimes you might want to do that when you're thinking about what you're going to build as an application developer. You might want to draw something out like this where you say, all right, this is my first step. And then I go down to, I go to here, and this is where the output goes to. And then I want to save it to my Photos app. It's handy to be able to walk through how how you imagine your app is going to flow. All right, so let's start coding. Let's start with that first page. So right off the bat, you can see this is a little bit more, maybe a bit more intimidating, but it's recognizable. So we have a comment here that says create the space, and we have let space equal, there's a capital space, capital S space, and then parentheses. Well, we can kind of guess from our Learn to Code 1 and 2 that this is space is a type. This is a variable over here, variable declaration, this let space. So we've just assigned an instance of space to this space variable. Right, that's a good start. And then there's a few other comments here saying create the component, add the component to the space, and then start the camera. Well, in this playground, we have our instructions over here. So let's have a look. And you can see from the dots that there are more instructions to swipe through. So this is where we're going to learn the basics of app creation and design. So if we swipe through here, I just swiped over to the left, we're going to create the components. So if we tap on components, because it's blue text, we'll get a definition. Component is a building block, such as a space or a camera used in building an app. Well, what else were building blocks when we worked in Learn to Code 1 and 2? Right, there were types. So a component is basically another way of referring to a type here. So we're going to have a type called, or a component called Swiftie Camera. And it's made up of several components, right? So there's going to be a lot of different pieces under the hood, but really this is the one that we interact with, this Swiftie Camera. We'll have an image view, a shutter button, there's the button. So the two components we're starting with are the space and Swiftie Camera. The space is this whole grid view here. So if I swipe up, I can see more here. So let's see, it says start by creating an instance of Swiftie Camera named Camera. Okay, so we can do one of three things. We can either write it out ourselves, which we'll do first, drag and drop, or copy and paste. So copy and paste, you would just tap on these two documents icon, and it'll copy it to your clipboard. And then you can go over here to the component, tap once, tap again, and paste. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hit undo. and I'll just type it out myself. So I'll do let camera equal, and then I'll tap on the value, and I'm going to pick Swiftie Camera, pick my parentheses, and there, it's auto-completed that initializer for me. Now, there are certain styles that they've defined on this Swiftie Camera. So if I hit the dot, it'll show me that they've defined a few different styles here. Cloud, kitty, plane, rocket, shark. So I'm going to pick plane for now, because that's what it says over here. Now, if we tap on the next one, what's a space? There's a little plus button. We'll tap on the plus button. It says, okay, so the space is the container component into which we can put other components. And it says here, over here, add the component to the space. So we already have the instance of space created for us. That's cool. All right, so we seem to be pretty good there. Now, what's a Swiftie Camera? Let's see. Swiftie Camera is a component that you can use to take pictures using the front and or back camera on your iPad. That's cool. And assemble your camera. We'll make our own camera component. So that's a different playground that we'll get to later. And then this explains what a code comment is. Now, all of these ones in green, preceded by the 2 slashes, these are code comments. So they're not going to get run by Swift. I can type whatever I want in there. Ideally, I type useful hints for myself to say, oh, this is what I did here, or this is what I need to do here. So let's swipe to the next page. So we've got the camera. Now we want to add the camera. So we need to add it to the space, this part, to get it to show up. So again, we can write, drag or drop, or copy to paste this code. So the way you can drag and drop, because this is a lot of code, I want to tap on it and hold. It'll get a little bit darker, and then I'll drag it over here, and I can see the blue line is my cursor, so I can have it dropped right there. I don't need to put it underneath this comment. I do need to put it underneath this line, because if I accidentally grab it, if I accidentally dragged and dropped this thing up here, it's going to complain because it doesn't know anything about camera yet. And it's going to say, use of unresolved identifier camera, because I defined it down here. So let's delete that guy. Hit delete. All right, so we added this here, and let's see. So what are we doing? Space has this method on it called add. Now this is the item that we can add at, and we give it a certain point and a size. So that's kind of cool. So and again, we can kind of see that we're creating an instance of a point, because there's a capital P, and then the parentheses mean this is the initializer, and we're given an X and a Y coordinate. And some of you may have worked with X and Y coordinates before. If not, don't worry, we're going to get into that. Then we give it a size. So we give it a width of 500 and a height of 500. And that's in roughly in pixels here. It just defines a certain length on the screen. A little bit like when we had Turtle Graphics and we were stepping forward by 1, by 2, by 10. 1 or 2 pixels you can't really see with your own eye. 10, 20, 50, 100 you can see with your eye. Okay, so we've added the camera. There's a little comment here saying, how do I change the position of the camera? And this is where it explains, if I tap on this icon, I'll see that this is what the grid looks like. So when I add something at 0, 0, this is the X, this is the Y, it's going to add it in the middle of the screen. If I added it at minus 500, it'll add it over here to the left of the screen, minus 500X, and then if I added it at 0Y. So using these coordinates, you can kind of place it in different corners of your view. So I'm going to leave it right in the center for now. I'm going to tap this blue button to bring that back down again. All right, so let's as it says here, let's run our code. So it's going to ask me if I want to enable it to use the camera, well, it's not going to be very useful if I don't let it access the camera. So I'll hit OK. Okay, not bad. I've got a button here. I've got a little flip thing. I've got a big gray box, which isn't super exciting. Okay, so let's go back to the thing. Let's stop it. And it brings back out the instructions. Now I'm going to swipe to the left. Okay, I need to start the camera. So to get any kind of input from this camera on my iPad, I need to actually start it. So this is all I'm going to call on it. I have my camera right here. This is a variable. I can call camera dot, and there's a few things we could change here, like the background color, background image. We're actually just going to call the start method. So let's try running our code now. Way more interesting. Now I've got the camera working. I can tap the button. The screen will flash like I've taken a picture. I can flip it around and you can see the desk. This is really exciting. Or the wall, the microphone. So now we've got our camera hooked up. Let's stop this code and check out what we have to do next. So now we're going to swipe over. We can experiment with camera styles. So we saw this earlier when I typed out the camera, there were different styles there. So let's try changing it to a kitty and run my code. That's the only line I've changed. The only thing I've changed is I went to the camera declaration, and inside my Swiftie Camera initialization, I changed the style from .plain to .kitty, which is okay. Let's try changing it again. Let's go to maybe cloud. Oh, nice. All right, we'll stick with cloud for now. So they've defined inside this Swiftie Camera type, they've defined these different styles that will change the appearance of the actual camera. All right, so let's stop our code and move on. So we're going to swipe over again. And we have a little quiz. I'm going to let you guys guess. So, because when you type in here, but if you just tap an option and hit confirm, you'll get either red or you'll get green if you get the right answer. So you try getting the right answer, and I'll meet you on the next page. Okay, hopefully everyone got the right answer. If you don't, try tapping another item and then hitting confirm. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is we'll work through this playground page and see how we get on. So far we've got a camera added to this space. We can tap the button to take a picture, but we're not seeing the actual picture that's captured. So that's not a very useful camera. So let's add an image view here that'll let us see what picture we're taking. All right, so let's swipe over again. I'm in here. I'm going to swipe over to the left. If you don't have this item here, if it's not showing up, you can just tap on this little icon up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, cool. So we're back, and now we're going to start using an image view component. There's an image view inside the camera, the Swiftie Camera component. We're going to actually take an image view ourselves and just display a static image, the picture that we actually took, rather than the preview that we saw inside the camera. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to create an instance of Swiftie Camera called camera. So if we need help, we can tap on here. We can drag and drop this stuff over. I'm going to do that. I'm going to tap on this and drag over here. So I've created a camera. Now we're going to create an instance of image view. So I'm going to say, I'll type this one out, image view. And it's going to be of type image view. Now I'm going to tap on the parentheses. And I won't give it any parameters for initializer. Okay, so if I run this, though, it won't be very interesting. I'll just see the space. Nothing will get added to the screen because I haven't added the components to the space. So what we're going to do is swipe over to the next one. Now, this talks about the coordinate system a little bit. We can go and it says, hey, add it to this Swiftie camera to the space named camera at point X is 0, Y is minus 100. And this is the size we want. And then it'll tell us about the image view in a second. So let's try this out. So let's try space dot add. So here we're going to pick this function. So the one with the size on it as well. So the component I want to add is a camera. So I'm going to tap on camera. I need to create a point instance. So I'm going to say point, hit the parentheses. I'm going to give it 2 integers. The first one is going to be, what did it say back up here? It said 0. And then the Y is going to be minus 1. So there's the minus there. Not minus 1, minus 100. And then for size, we'll ignore the question mark for now. We'll do size, and then parentheses, to give it a size. So we want to give it a width and a height. We're just using whole numbers, so we'll pick the int version. So we want to make it width 500, height 500. Great. All right, cool. There's our space with a camera. Now let's add the image view. Now you can also scroll down here and just tap and drag this one over. If you want to do that while I'm typing all this out, that would be cool. So let's do space add. If you want to practice, that's good too. We're going to get an image view. We're going to get a point. Now, if we look back up here, we need to see where we're adding it. So we wanted to add the image view to 0, and then Y is 300. Okay, so we'll say 0 there. And here we'll say 300. Now we need to give it a size. So we'll tap on the size type down here. And we'll tap on the parentheses. We'll tap on this initializer. And the width of this one is going to be 300 by 300. And now what do you think? Is this enough to have it show up on the screen now? Well, let's try it out. Okay. All right, we're not hooked up because we haven't started the camera yet. All right, just a couple more steps here. So we've got that added. And it mentions here that we won't see the image view until we set its properties. All right, so let's do that. That's the next thing. And it looks like from our comments, that's the next thing we're doing anyway. So it says here, we have a definition for properties. This is the variable on our type. So we can set a few different variables on our image view. So let's go into border, color, and width. We're going to make it blue here and have the border width of 15. So I'm going to tap on this and drag over. Now this is just like we assign other variables values. We can just say image view. We use dot notation. So the image view dot border color. So that's a property on our image view. Will be equal to this color. We can say image view dot border width is 15. Sounds kind of large. We have an option to place a placeholder photo. Let's tap on this row here. So we can drag that over. And this is just like we have our little color swatch is a way to define our colors. If we tap on this image, it'll actually bring up an image picker. So I could make it a number of different things. It's our placeholder image. There's some shots of Apple Park there, soccer ball, avocados. We'll leave the default one though. We can define rounded corners and a rotation to it. So here, let's drag over this corner radius. We'll take all these properties because I think they're all kind of interesting. We'll tap on rotation. A rotation of 5. We'll see what that looks like. And the kind of fun thing about this code is that we can then check it out and see what happens when we change these values. So let's run our code. Okay, cool. Well, here's our new image view. We've given it a few properties, and it shows up on the screen. There's our default image, our border width. It's got a little bit of a tilt to it. Well, I'm not super happy. Like I said, that's kind of a big border. I want to make it a little bit smaller. Let's make it just a 5. You can make it whatever you like. So if I run my code, I'll see that just the border width changed. See, it's much thinner now. Maybe that looks a little bit better. The corner radius refers to this corner here. It's kind of nice instead of being a hard-edged rectangle, because our views start out as rectangles. And with some of these properties, we're able to set the appearance so that it looks a little bit different than just a kind of boring old square or rectangle. All right, if we hit stop, let's swipe over to the next instruction and find out what we've got to do now. All right, so this is another quiz for you. So which line of code adds an image view to the space? Is it this one? Well, this looks like a variable declaration, right? And this is our creating an instance of an image view. How about this one? This one, it looks like we're changing the border width to 15 of our image view. How about this one? ImageView.image equals fireworks. Again, we're just setting a property. This one looks more likely. We're on space, we call .add image view at a certain point. So let's tap that one and hit confirm. Nice. All right, let's swipe over and finish this off. So we have to write the code to start our camera. And we just did that one, and that's one of the simpler bits of code that we can write. So let's try to remember how we type that out, right? So we say camera dot start, and we can see that we have some new properties here. But if we just focus on start, we call the start method. We can run our code and we'll take a picture with the camera. Great, the screen flashed, but nothing came up in my image view yet. So how do we fix that? Well, let's stop this and go on to the next instruction. So now what we have to do is we have to tell the camera to pass its image over to the image view. We set the image over here. We told the image view to display this image. Now we're going to try to connect the camera. So anytime it takes a picture, we'll have an access to this. If you looked before, we have a camera dot photo taken property. That's going to be filled with the image data anytime we press that button on the camera. So we're going to attach that to the image view so that the captured image shows up in the image view. So let's do that. So camera.phototaken dot, and we have some options here that look kind of funky, but look, this is all it winds up being is connect to ImageView.input. All right, cool. So we'll do this. Connect to ImageView, and remember to use your your variable, not the type. If we did the type, and then we even tried to get it to work, we could say, let's see, .input. We're going to have a little problem. And it's going to tell us instance member input cannot be used on type. This one is almost understandable based on our work with Learn to Code 1 and 2. It's telling us that, hey, this is actually something you can call on the instance, not on the type. So let me change that I to a lowercase I. And all my errors are gone. Now let's try running our code. Okay, there we go. We've got our camera. If I take a picture, I've got a picture. Now, the quality of the picture may not be great, but there's a picture of my face. I can turn the camera around. I can take a picture of some cables. The image view gets updated with the picture of the cables. So, not bad. This is a great way to start our camera application and our photo application. Now we can take pictures with our iPad camera and add them to an image view. And what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to take that even further, and we're going to start to add stickers, labels to our camera view, and then we're also going to change the properties of what this stuff looks like and try maybe even saving it to our photos album. That's all for us today. Hopefully you enjoyed this new session. And yeah, we'll see you back tomorrow. More taking pictures and coding. See ya.